married woman to a married woman, sometimes we make mistakes and we don't make our husbands feel safe. And sometimes before we look and say it's our husband's fault, why are you not available? Where did I not make you feel safe? So that way you can show some emotional availability to me. So that way you can express your weaknesses. You can express your vulnerabilities. Start pointing the finger at yourself so you can actually start being the togetherness and the partnership that you're supposed to be.
I gotta ask this question, but do you feel safe? See, that's the thing.
No, because then let me say that, Ace.
That's a part.
It is very easy, and I'm saying this because I have been in this place where I didn't feel safe. But we are talking about in a marriage. And sometimes we don't feel safe because we did not compromise and we were not flexible enough to create the safety in the communion, in our togetherness. And sometimes we sit here and say, I don't feel safe because it's easier for me to focus on me. That's what I mean. When we're always focused on ourselves, that marriage is never going to work because sometimes it is us. I want safety, but in this whole entirety or somewhere in the marriage, I didn't create safety for you. She probably doesn't feel safe because both of them dropped the ball somewhere. So now they need to sit down together and figure out where do we make a mistake? Where do we drop the ball at? Where can we both create safety? Not just me, because this is a together, this is a union, this is a marriage.
Let's go and get a crack in creating safety in relationships. I'm going to start with you first, Luis. Like, you taking notes already, huh?
Yeah, I already got the pad and all. It's interesting what she said, creating a safe space. Look, I think you have to hold a space, for each other, and I think you also have to build in somewhere in your relationship where you check in with one another. I've mentioned this in the past. Like, you have to check in with your partner and make sure that, that you're adhering to the things that you said that you're going to do in the relationship, that you're adhering to those principles. And if you're dropping the ball, you're falling short, there's an opportunity to have that conversation and say, like, I feel like I'm letting you down, or I feel like I'm letting myself down, and here are my reasons why. You know what I'm saying? And be able to be vulnerable enough to have that conversation with your person. It's not going to be pretty at first. I know everybody sells it like it's just a straightforward process, but letting someone down or disappointing your person, when you are meant to keep your word or be consistent in whatever capacity that you agreed upon, it could feel like a hit to the gut, right? And I think that you have to create moments to check in with one another. Life is busy, work is busy, the kids are, take up a lot of your time. There's all these other things that happen outside the house. So being to have a space and time for you both to sit down and really talk about things that are not working and the things that are working well, because I think there's always an opportunity to, give flowers and have that praise report. But when she talks about safe space, she talks about letting that person be vulnerable to have that conversation. And if you feel that you're both at a crossroad where you can't do that for each other, or there's something holding you back, I think there needs to be perhaps a third-party intervention that allows you to bridge that gap in between you both to ensure that the marriage or the relationship is still heading straight course for where you guys want it to be. I yield.
All right. Go ahead, Mila. What are your thoughts about it, man?
I would agree with what was just said. I feel like, especially women, right? We do not create safe spaces for men a lot of the time. I don't know what that is. I think sometimes we as women sometimes forget that we want a safe space, and sometimes I think we forget to create that safe space. And I think naturally, as women, as feminine energy, we are the nurturers. We are the ones that kind of are supposed to give that energy into the dynamic so that both parties can feel like it's a safe space to express whatever it is that you need to express. And I think sometimes this stuff is overlooked in our beginning stages of the relationship, and we kind of let it go on, because I don't know how we get married and we don't feel safe. That seems a little wild to me. But I think that sometimes that in those dynamics, both parties have to sit back and say, where did I fuck up? Because 90% of the time, both people have dropped the ball somewhere, whether it was the man or the woman, whoever. And I honestly believe sometimes therapy can help. I know in one of my past relationships, we went to therapy because we didn't feel that it was a safe space. Now, I do feel if you're going to go the therapy route, both people have to be invested in fixing that dynamic, because if one person is not, then it's not going to go nowhere. And I think both people have to be cognizant of like creating a safe space and making people feel like, you can be really open and honest about those feelings. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, women, we kind of don't create that space because we bash, we talk shit, we bring it up with our homegirls, we whoopty whoopty wop wop wop. You know what I'm saying? Where sometimes men cannot don't feel safe, and then inadvertently, then they don't make it a safe space, and now we got a whole non-safe space, and now the kids ain't safe and nobody's safe. So I just think that as you're going into a relationship, right? I think you just have to be cognizant of like how you want to feel and how you need to express and how others need to be. But I think a lot of this can sometimes stem from just having the lack of self-awareness. And I think people get into relationships not knowing what they need, and so then you can't articulate it, because if you're not a good communicator, if you're not a good expresser, if you're not aware of your needs yourself, how can you expect someone to know that if you can't express it and be able to say like, hey, this is what I need? You know what I'm saying? And when people are not giving you that, setting those boundaries, and then like being like, you're not meeting my needs, and like not moving forward in the dynamic. But people are not getting their needs met, and then they're moving forward, and now it's like it's a shit show. So I would just think like being more open and honest, and like having that self-awareness to be able to identify the things that you may be a little bit more sensitive with, or the areas where you need to be able to express, or even like having like those little check-ins, or even like code words, because I've seen people like they'll have like a word or like a phrase to let people know like, oh, this is a safe space time, or this is a time I need to get something off my chest, or I need to do whatever. And I find that when I talk to couples who've done that, it kind of works for them. So I just feel like, finding what works for you and your partner, and it should be okay if both people are aligned with making sure each other are feeling seen and heard in a relationship.
Brother Hink, what does emotional safety look like for you in a relationship?
Well, emotional safety. Looking at that clip, man, there's a lot of problems with that clip to me. But what does emotional safety look like to me? Well, to me, it's feel like where somebody can be, able to let themselves go, unwind, where they are going through some stuff at work, or maybe some stuff they're dealing with at home that they feel like they need to talk about. They may feel a little shy, a little scared and nervous to talk about, but yet they're willing to talk about it if you put them in the right position or the right situation. But JR, can I speak on that video though?
Oh yeah, you can. I just was asking that just to get a little bit more context as far as like what do men look for when it comes to emotional support.
I got you. So another thing a man looks for in emotional support, man, is a woman who allows him to be vulnerable. It's not common. I think what's that? Malik Sophie? Fade?
It's
Am I
Mila.
pronouncing it wrong?
Mila.
Okay.
Mila.
I pronounce that. Mila said a lot of times the ladies don't allow their significant other, their man, or their husbands to be vulnerable for whatever reasons, and that's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. But as far as that video, we came up during a time, or we raised our kids during a time, where we used to tell your kids as parents, use your words. And we'll tell our kids to use your words, but you are not willing to use that same sentiments about yourself and use your words. And all of a sudden you're scared, you're nervous, you can't have the conversation. And one of the things is this woman's able to go into a public forum to get herself possibly put on social media, which she did, and express what's going on. But I bet you she wouldn't do that same thing in a room one-on-one with her man. That makes no sense to me. That you were willing to put your shit out in the streets, but you wouldn't willing to sit down with your man for an hour and have this same conversation and work this shit out. That don't make sense. I think it's foolish. I think it's crazy. And if that was my woman, I would have plenty of conversation for when she got home once I found out about this bullshit. First, I don't believe in putting our business out there like that. It's not for the masses. Then they don't know the workings of what's going on in our home. They don't know what I have to do with your crazy ass. But you tell your side of the story. But my side of the story not getting told. So now it's making me look like I'm in a bad, like I'm all at fault at the situation. No, that's not good. So if you are able to have that conversation with all these people in this room, you need to be able to have that conversation with that one person in the room. That's more important than anybody in that building, in that space, or on that stage. That should have never happened.